Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and I'm way behind in terms of doing a project that I had promised all the way back in November when Scott sent me this reel, told me for my kind of do a video on it. He wasn't using it any longer, and it's an interesting reel. Could I do the video? And quite honestly, things just got in the way, but finally have an opportunity to do that. And actually was reminded that I had an opportunity to do that by getting a reel in that's similar to this this week. So this is a kind of a unique reel. It's the Garcia Center Drag. It's a reel that you adjust the drag washer from the middle of the spool. So that kind of is different than reaching over your line to adjust the drag on a top drag and also coming in from underneath. So it's kind of an ergonomic design. They didn't last very long in terms of designs, but it is interesting, and I thought that we would all benefit from and enjoy seeing how this reel comes together and how it can be serviced. And as I mentioned, I did get one in. I think it's a smaller size, but I did get one in recently, and I'll be doing that one next. So let's do what we normally do. Let's take the spool off. This has got a button spool. Place that off to the side. Looks like this one is held in by a nut, which is probably the same kind of a function as you would get on a top drag adjuster. But it looks like it's holding in the center case here. There's a series of washers. I'm looking at the schematic diagram for this, and I recommend everybody go out and get a schematic if you're working on a reel, particularly if you're not familiar with that reel, because that's going to tell you a lot about how the reel comes together. And even if you're not familiar with it, like I'm not familiar with this one, it'll at least give you some clues along the way. I also recommend a couple of things. I recommend wearing the protective glove. That's always good to keep oils and greases off your hand. I recommend the parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container. And I recommend taking pictures, and I'm taking pictures here with the video camera, but you can use a still camera, use your cell phone, use any of those things. They'll help you get out of a jam when you don't quite remember how they all go back together. All right, it says this piece comes out in a single focus. It does. There's a kind of a big cap with four slots, northeast, southwest. Looks like there's a bunch of washers in here then. So you want to keep those washers in the right place. So we have a kind of a pressure plate and washer. Looks like we have a series of them. We have a, this is almost like the eared washers. This one's going to grab the spool, the shaft. And we have another one that I'll call the eared washer on top of that. And then we have two metals, two metals. They're very similar to the way that the old Mitchell 300 washers worked, pure metal kind of stuff. All right, that's your drag stack. Very interesting. You don't want to lose any of them, so let's go ahead and put them into the tray. Now is a good place for a picture because you're just never quite sure. This is the bottom carrier then. This whole thing should come off. It does. And that's your adjuster. So as you tighten down on that, it will compress that with the nut up top. It'll tighten and it'll compress up and tighten down on your shaft. Looks like we have a little shim washer here. And then we're going to have a just looking for my piece here. We're going to have a collar here that's going to hold the rotor on. This one's kind of interesting because you got to, if I read this diagram correctly, we got to take all of this off in order to get to releasing the bottom part of this. So that's off. Let's see if we can get that collar off. A little difficult working in that that cramped container there, but I guess that's kind of the way it works. Just reading the manual, and they kind of reinforce what I suggest when folks ask how frequently should you do your reel in terms of a complete take apart and reassembly, and their answer is comparable to my answer, which is about once a year. Let's see if this one works. Oh, I got lucky. So there's a hex nut on the bottom of this. You're going to want to grab it. It's a 12 millimeter. I just check to see which way it's going. The orientation is typical counterclockwise. And generally I like to take this off with my hands, but again, it seems like there's kind of an interesting turning going on here, so let's do our best. It may just be that it's tight with the greases and all. Okay, and then we have these, we have a couple of things here. Not quite sure. We have a cap here. That's next. Just want to take a moment to see what I got in that cap. That's a little click cap. So this little thing is going to click on the inside of the rotor here. And it looks like that can just lift up. It's a spring, so this is going to provide you a click. So don't lose that. That's a good place to take a picture because you're never quite sure what that is. Then this can slide up. And also notice when it's slid out that this is where the piece was going. So that locks in your shaft. And it allows you to screw down. Let's take a look now and see which ones are holding the case on. It looks like these three are holding the case on. It's possible that there's a fourth one there. The fourth one looks short, so I'm not sure if that's actually holding the case on or not. I guess the only way to find out is to take it apart. So very interesting. I haven't seen a design of a reel like this. I think what I'm going to do also is I'm going to take that handle off. It just seems to be bouncing in the way right now. But sometimes you just got to get adventurous, and I thank Scott for letting me get adventurous. He gave me the reel, so if it breaks or something, and I guess it's on me, but at least it's not that worrisome in terms of what do I do next, right? Okay, when I take the handle off, I also like to put the handle screw right back in. So in the manual it actually says go do it yourself. I'll tell you what, I don't know how many people do it, but they also give you this little out. It says if you're not comfortable, you can have it professionally serviced through Abu, so kudos to them. Let's see if this is going to remove it or if I do need to take that small screw out as well. When you take your screws out, make sure they're all the same size, or if they're not the same size, make sure you identify where the short or the long screw goes. So these are definitely case screws, these three. I'm not sure if that fourth one, the one in the middle there, actually is a case screw. So we'll find out in a moment. Oh, it is tying something down, so let's go ahead and take that out. So this is a bearing cap for sure, but it also uses that to hold on to the, hold the top to the lower case. Okay, there you go. So 3 screws. That one holds the shield on. This is your bearing assembly with an anti-reverse override in that bearing assembly. And right now you just slide it up. There you go. That's what I thought was going to go on there. Very interesting. Now, if you had to replace the gear, because this is only the main gear here, and you're wondering how that main gear is working, well, it's working on this. It's working on this spiral section here, because that main gear is going to be turning like a worm drive. We're going to be in here, and you'll notice that it turns it like a worm drive. Isn't that kind of interesting? The old spiral gear technology. Beautiful, beautiful design. I like that a lot. Good for them. All right, so if I wanted to take the main gear out, it's easy enough. You would use a snap ring plier. There's 2 snap rings on each side. Let's see if I can get it this way. Well, I think I have to go change the snap ring to a smaller version, and I don't have that one on my hands right now. So for the sake of this video, let's just continue to do what we're doing here. We have the pinion gear came out conveniently enough. This is totally clean inside. This is your anti-reverse burring. It's in the case, and you can remove that. That whole assembly will slide up. If you needed to replace that, what you would do is you would take the spring off here, and simply everything else will slide up in its place, but that's not needed. Again, if you look through here, all you can see is the teeth from the main gear. And I'm going to just take the opportunity right now to do the brief cleaning on that. There's the littlest of dry grease. There you go, that's done. I'm going to get new grease. I'm going to use Pen Precision Real Grease on my brush. And we're going to just get a nice amount of grease onto the teeth of this. And you can tell that the reel wasn't used much, and that's actually why Scott sent it to me. He said he wasn't using it. And if I wanted to use it as an example, go right ahead. All right, if I had the right snap ring pliers, I would have taken these out. But understand that you can take it out and you can pull these bearings. Right now, I'm just going to flood the bearings. I'm going to use an aftermarket oil. It's called Real-X. It's a synthetic fishing reel oil, and it seems to have served me well. Check your pinion gear where it's going, where it's been. I like to use a soft brush just to clean out any old greases that might be in there. There really isn't any. Then wipe it down with a paper towel. If you take your thumb or any other fingernail and just slide it through the gears, you can kind of clean it up. You can see how it does it there. And then I'm going to go back and make sure that I grease this side up as well. And my endless bucket of grease is just about running out, but I've got one right behind it. And that's actually what made me think of Scott, because he did give me a tub of grease. Nice guy. Gave me a tub of grease, and that I went to look for it, and I said, geez, I haven't done that darn reel. All right, we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to flood this bearing, both sides. You want to make sure that you get grease onto the pinion sleeve there, just so that this all slides nicely. And we go ahead and reassemble this. I'll make sure it gets seated properly. That's seated properly. Now we know that this center one is going to hold down that gear structure. Just like that. So let's go ahead and put that back on. And then we can give it a turn, make sure everything's turning nicely, which it is. It was turning nicely before. We got the bearings oiled on both sides. We have a case. The only thing you need to do in this case is make sure it's clean. There's nothing going on inside this case like goes on in many of them. And then we can simply reinstall. There we go. So we're in, and then we want to align our 3 screws that we took out for the case. And we'll move up. Surface isn't much more to be done here. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to just check those drags. We kind of check them on the way in, so we know they're in pretty good shape. We know that this reel overall has been lightly used. So it's really a matter just about tamping all of this down and reassembling. So while we're doing this, I want to thank our first responders, our essential personnel, our law enforcement, everybody that's working to keep us safe and healthy. And I want to do a special shout out to our healthcare workers that are starting to distribute the vaccine. How important is that, right? We're all kind of counting on that vaccine to help us through all of this. And there's tireless hours. I'm seeing these clinics are running 24/7 trying to get it out there, dealing with supply issues and everything else. So thank you for everything you're doing there to try and keep us safe during this craziness. Okay, we've got that. We're going to go ahead now. We're going to put our little assembly back on here that lines with the hole. Just like that. It's hard to miss that one. And then here's your pawl. So that's what was driving the that tooth gear. I want to make sure we can put that in there. I guess we want to put this in first. Again, kind of learning along the way here, but you want to get that in. This is your pawl for the worm gear on there, and a shot of the oil so that it travels smoothly. And I think what you want to do is turn this There we go. You want to turn it so that it gets seated properly. And then this has a slot for that pawl, if you'll notice, so it's not symmetrical. There is an indentation on the one side, and you want to make sure that that's the side that goes over that ridge of the pawl. And you can kind of look through to do that. That's why I pulled the little shim piece off of this. That goes on next. This is a keyway, so you want to make sure it's inside the grooves. I'm not there yet. There we go, just like that. Grab that collar. There's a little rubber O-ring that goes on top of that collar. Go ahead and flip this. So there's a couple of lessons learned here. One of them is don't be afraid just because it's something new that you're not going to be able to work on it and not going to be successful doing it. I know I've saw a couple of comments come in from time to time about fear. I understand it, but at the end of the day, if you sometimes if you're bold, you're going to do just fine. I think David was sending me one. He says he's been encouraged by the videos and that he is trying one, but one looks more difficult than the other. And I simply said, you left the best to last. Go get them. And I think you will. I just noticed if you line the points up with the holes, then your little hold down clamp here should line up. And it does. And then we want to grab that little screw that's part of this. I put some grease on there just so that I can grab that screw. Those of you that watch my videos know I have trouble with those small screws. So that goes next. And that little rubber O-ring goes on there. And memo to self when I'm out and about, I need to look for that small snap ring plier. Okay, now we got the little piece that rides on the bottom of the spool assembly. Our spool assembly here is nothing, right? It's just an empty bottom that's going to bottom out there. Let's put that on. Seat it properly. And we had the two wire pieces, the wire washers, and they were nested. I noticed that when I took these off, they were nested. So back they go nesting, just like that. And those bridges were pointed up. So that's where pictures help if you kind of get lost along the way. And then we loaded this up the way it came out. So let's go ahead and just put that back in, see if we can keep them all tight while we're doing that. Next up then was the nut. Now I checked those washers. Those washers were very good. They were a composite type of a washer. They didn't need any lubrication. So if you needed to replace them, you saw how they came out in the bottom of this carrier here. This is a 10 millimeter nut that holds it all down. I'm going to have a simple wrench for that. Spool, there's nothing going on up top, but it is a single release spool, just like that. Grab our handle, and we'll give it a spin. It should, it was spinning beautifully before, so I don't imagine anything else is going to be happening, but one never knows when one takes a reel apart. Especially when you have a pawl in there, it needs to get seated and all. Okay, so it's time for us to take this one for a test drive then. What a nice, smooth operating reel. Let's give it an idea here. So the idea here is you can adjust your drag. Plenty of play. Tighten it down this way, I think. So you can tighten it without getting your hands. There you go. So that works beautifully. Sure we have a trip. Nice smooth reel. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did and you want to see more, again, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, hit the notifications. If you have any questions regarding this reel or any reel, maybe you're stuck on a project, leave them in the comment section. I do try to respond to the questions. And then finally, if you have a reel that needs servicing or repair, if you contact me on the business card that follows, I'll be happy to provide you with the repair information. So I'm going to go take this one fishing. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.